think about how much the burden of being pregnant for a long period of time, and the burden of child rearing, and the burden of getting shelter and food, and then if you're reproducing for a second time, caring for your 2 or 3 year old, right? All of these things are challenging. And how does that help if you maybe had another set of hands? Another set of hands who was experienced would be useful, but they'd only be useful if they weren't tasked with those tasks themselves, right? So if they're busy child rearing, they can't really help you. And so it's called the grandmother hypothesis. And the hypothesis is, and there's a lot of evidence to back it up, that that over time, women began living beyond their ovarian function. And it's a totally different way of looking at it, right? So you can take this patriarchal ovarian failure, or you can say, how did women become strong enough that they began to outlive their ovarian function? And that's the attitude that I like to take, because that's exactly what happened. If you compare us to chimps, our closest living relatives, chimps reproduce until they're sort of mid to late 40s, and then they die. But we keep on living. And the theory is that there would have been, some longer living people. They would have then passed their genetics along, because having a longer lived person who could help made you more likely to reproduce. And so in multiple different cultures, you see that when a grandmother was present and living in the house, there were more grandchildren. And so that sort of, is the grandmother hypothesis. And there's some great modern work to back it up with the Hosda in Tanzania. That Dr. Kristen Hawkes is the person who sort of originally proposed the grandmother hypothesis. And, during a time when her daughter is, breastfeeding and caring for her newborn, Hosda grandmother is spending 35 to 37 hours a week foraging for food. So, they're incredibly active and incredibly, supporting the family, and they're actually providing the bulk of the calories. So, that's the grandmother hypothesis, that it became worthwhile for us to live beyond our ovarian function. And then there's all the supplements that most of them are unstudied. The few that do have some good data, I do mention in the book. But supplements are really largely unregulated. And, would you accept an antidepressant that had absolutely no studies behind it and no safety data? I don't think people would. So they should expect the same from supplements. Unfortunately, the government doesn't protect us that way. So the best or the worst, depending on how you want to look at it, example is black cohosh. So that's sold to people for all different kinds of reasons. And oftentimes there's a lot of sort of exotization of other cultures as well. So black cohosh is often sold to people because with the idea that Native Americans used it for menopause symptoms. Well, they didn't actually. So there's that aspect of it right off the bat. Right. Secondly, with black cohosh, people have actually, studied it to see, so black cohosh, some people get liver failure from it, but some people don't. And so people wanted to know why that was. And actually what they found was a significant percentage of the samples didn't contain black cohosh at all. And not at all. They had a different product. So then you say, well, what do they contain? Oh, well, they contain something that's like from another country. It doesn't even grow where black cohosh is. So, so you can basically put whatever you want in a supplement. You could scoop dirt from your backyard and put it in a supplement and sell it. Right. And so part of the problem with studying these things is because if I want to study a prescription estrogen, a patch, right? I know that every single patch that I buy from that manufacturer will have the exact same amount of hormone, plus or minus 0.01% or whatever the standards are for that hormone. So I can test it because I know that I'm testing the same thing over and over again. So with a supplement, even if it does contain black cohosh, let's say it does, you don't know that the next batch that you're going to get is going to have that same purity, to have that same thing. So you could do one study that could have one batch and people could get a good effect. And then other people could replicate that study, but they're using a different batch and they might not have the same amount of drug. They might have a different drug. And supplements are sometimes even adulterated with antidepressants or with hormones. So it's really a very concerning market out there.